Hi everyone, I have a review and demo for you today of the Lancome Teint Idole Ultra, and this shade is in 90 Ivory N. Yes, Ivoire. And I had gotten a sample of this from Sephora and I used all of the sample, decided I liked it well enough to purchase it. So I have been using this off and on for several weeks now, and I feel like I've used it enough to really have an idea of what I like about it, what I don't like about it, how it works on my skin, and that kind of thing. So my skin right now, I am pregnant and my skin gets a lot drier when I'm pregnant. So I'm wearing a pretty rich moisturizer to compensate for the kind of overall dryness. My T-zone is slightly oily. My nose, like this tip of my nose still gets quite oily, but the rest of my T-zone doesn't get as oily as it used to, or it does when I'm not pregnant. So it's just kind of like slightly oily in the T-zone. My cheeks and some other spots are dry or very dry. I do have some chronic dermatitis issues where around my nose a lot of things cause it to peel and flake, and I also have the same issue underneath my lip. I also have a very chronic dry spot up on my forehead. So I have kind of a combination of some areas that do break down makeup really fast normally, and other areas that can look really bad with a matte finish foundation or even a satin finish. It can just look bad when your nose is flaking off. My skin tone for reference is between NC5 to NC10. I have more yellow tones in the rest of my skin. My face is quite a bit darker than my neck and my chest because I have a lot more freckles on my face than I do everywhere else. So what I try to do is just lighten up my face without completely covering my freckles, so that it will match with my neck and my chest a little bit better. And you can see the more yellow undertones kind of in my neck and chest, whereas on my face it looks more kind of peachy pink, just because of the redness I have, along with all the really warm kind of peachy freckles. So there are, this is considered a matte foundation, and I would not have tried this, but at Sephora it said that the shade 90 was new. I swatched it and it looked quite light, so I also liked when I swatched it. I have my hand skin tends to be fairly dry, and it wasn't doing this thing where almost every foundation I swatch, it will kind of settle into the lines of my hands. That usually tells me it's going to settle into the pores on my face. Typically, any foundation I use, I can't apply with my fingers. I need to use something like a Real Techniques Miracle Complexion sponge that's wet. That's the only way I can get it to sit on my face without kind of settling into my pores. Sometimes I can very carefully pat it in, but it will still usually look better if I use the sponge. There's something about the finish of this foundation and the formula that doesn't do that. I can't like smear it on like other people can, but which doesn't sound very classy, does it? Just smear the makeup all over your face. But if I pat it in, kind of like I'm using a sponge, I get a really nice finish, and I use less of the foundation than I do when I'm using the sponge because it's not getting absorbed by the sponge. So I can use less than a pump to get the coverage that I have here. So in the demo, I'll show you that application method that I use and how it goes onto my face. The moisturizer I used does, as you'll see from the start, leaves my finish, the finish of my face is quite shiny. And I did blot my T-zone, areas that tend to get more oily, so that I took away any of the kind of extra moisture that was left by the foundation or by the SPF. But I believe, to me, this is more semi-matte, and they might sell it as like a demi-matte, semi-matte type situation. It's definitely not full-on matte, which I really appreciate, because matte, like a fully matte foundation, does not look good on me where I have the most kind of obvious pores are around this area, and that's the most dry. And so a matte foundation can really, really enhance the dryness and the pores, and it's just very aging. Looks like I have more lines, that kind of thing. But this doesn't do that. It, I feel like it keeps this kind of semi-matte finish, which is quite natural looking, all day on the areas that are dry, so it doesn't get more dry looking throughout the day. In the areas that I tend to peel, around my nose and on underneath my lip, very weirdly have not been peeling with this foundation. I don't know if I'm reacting to ingredients in other foundations that make that area worse, but this looks better on those spots that normally peel than anything else that I have, which I find really surprising. I also appreciate it's fragrance free. It has a little SPF in it, SPF 15. The more the merrier. I'm already putting SPF on my face, but I'll take some more if I can get it. I do powder through my T-zone a little bit, depending on how matte or how much satin I want. I use different powders. Today I used the Sonia Kashuk Brightening Powder, which is a very silky. It mattifies without looking too powdery, but it does have a very small amounts of kind of very tiny, tiny sparkles. Kind of reminds me of the Guerlain, it reminds me of the Guerlain Meteorites, which also have very tiny sparkles. Those might actually be a little bit bigger than the ones in the Sonia Kashuk, but there, I think, are more of the sparkles in that. But I don't feel like it's something I can really see on my face, even under these really bright lights, which really kind of enhance any sparkles. Like the glitter on my eyes. So the three foundations that I have that I would consider my lightest foundations right now are the Nars Syberia. This is the Sheer Glow formula, and I like the color of this, but the formula, it doesn't wear very well on me. L'Oreal True Match in W1 Porcelain, which is a little bit more on the peachy side. It does oxidize on me, and this wears even worse than the Sheer Glow. It gets very dewy very fast. And then this is a little bit darker. It's also more on the peach side as opposed to the yellow side of the Syberia. Syberia is very yellow. The True Match is moderately peach, but I feel like it can sometimes really oxidize even darker. And this comes out looking quite peach, but I feel like on my face it doesn't change. What I put on my face is what I have throughout the day, and it wears a lot better. So I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see these swatches. I have Sheer Glow. Here's Nars Sheer Glow, and I blended them out a little bit better on the bottom here. L'Oreal True Match in W1, and then here's the Lancome 90N, which looks a lot peachier on my hand. And whenever I see it on my hand, I think, gosh, that looks dark. But then when I get it on my face, it seems to work well. Coverage-wise, I'm using less than a pump when I apply it with my hands. If I'm using the sponge, I do use a full pump. And I'm looking for light to medium coverage. Essentially, I want to lighten my face, even it out so it's all looking pretty similar, covering the redness and without covering my freckles, and get something that's a little bit more of a natural transition to my neck. I feel like this color works pretty well for me. The proof is when I edit this video. That's the best way for me to be able to really truly tell how it looks compared to my neck, because it is so hard to see that really well in a mirror, because a lot of times you get shadows and it's just really tricky. So having this, super intense lighting and getting it on video, I can't argue with that. So everything will be really well lit and I'll be able to see what the color really looks like. But I feel like day to day that it works quite well for my skin tone, even though it's more on the peachy side, whereas usually I would go for a more yellow color like the Nars Syberia shade. Wear time. I feel like this is a really long review. I apologize if I'm going into a little too much here, but since I'm pretty happy with this foundation, I guess I have a lot to talk about with it. I've had really good luck with the wear on this. We've been taking walks outside quite a lot lately, so I've been sweating in it, and I feel like it holds up to sweat quite well. If I put it on in the morning, we go out for a walk in the morning, come back, even if I was sweating a fair amount, it's still looking fine. I don't feel like I really need to change my face makeup while my son is napping. So that's nice. If I'm not doing anything that involves lots of sweating, so say yesterday we did go out, but it was a lot cooler, very minimal sweating. It was just from pushing him up the hills was the only sweat, as opposed to from the sun and everything. I did not change my foundation all day. By the time, so I put it on probably around 7:30 in the morning, and then before I took my shower around 10:30 at night, so that's a really long time, it was looking everywhere that's more dry was looking pretty much like it did in the morning. The only place that I really noticed the foundation was almost completely gone was just kind of this part of my nose. I did see more shine through my forehead and on my chin, but it looked like there still was a fair amount of product there. I could still see that it did not look like the only place where you could really see the freckles and really see the pink was on the end of my nose. Now, the end of my nose shows that way more because it gets the most red and it has some of the darkest freckles of the oily areas. I have a lot of, the concentration of freckles are kind of where the sun hits me, so where my cowlick is, my hair is naturally pulled back, so I have a lot of freckles up here in that dry area and also on the top of my cheekbones. So that's where my cheekbones is where I coverage, just so that I can take down, because it's almost a little bit blotchy and yellow looking there, and that still was looking good. The only place that really had the freckles and the pink kind of blaring was on the end of my nose. So I'd say that's pretty awesome wear-wise. In general, my T-zone tends to break down makeup really fast. It's pretty normal for me to feel like there is very little makeup on my chin, nose, and forehead after about 4 to 5 hours. So that being able to still see some product on my chin and my forehead after more than 12 hours, that's really nice. Even after that long wear time, my nose wasn't peeling, under my lip wasn't peeling. That, again, is also pretty unheard of for me. And even if I do have a few flakes around there, it sits on top of it very well. I feel like it's just not making it worse, which is surprising. I never even thought about the fact that maybe my foundation was making it worse, but I think there are some things in some foundations that do make it peel a lot more, because since I've been using this, very little peeling and my skincare really hasn't changed. So that's good to know. I don't know what it is that causes that peeling, but it's nice to know that I have something that doesn't irritate it or make it worse. So overall, as you can probably tell, I'm really pleased with this foundation. Maybe it would be even better if it was a little bit lighter, a little less peach, a little bit more yellow, but I feel like the color is workable and the formula works for me so much better than anything else I have that I'm really willing to make it work. So far, I would say this is probably the best foundation I've used in a really long time with my current skin setup. The only thing I'm not sure about is as it gets drier, as it gets close to winter, how it's going to continue working for me. Hopefully I can keep my skin nicely moisturized and it will continue to really work well, because so far I've just been so impressed with this foundation. It is rather pricey. I think it's $45, something like that. But for me, I feel like I do get a lot more for the smaller quantity. I feel like I need to use more of the Sheer Glow, definitely more of the True Match in order to get the same level of coverage, which I'm not looking for a lot. and it wears so much better that I'm not wanting to take it off halfway through the day and reapply. So I think that it's definitely a much better value than the other foundations that I have kind of at my disposal right now. So I think that's it for this foundation. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments below. I would love to hear from you. If you've tried it out, let me know if it worked for you, if you've taken a look at the color, how you think it's going to work with your skin tone. I would like to hear your input, what kind of undertones you have and how it works with those. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.